do. People look around and they say, you know what? This country's in a place I've never seen it before. I don't even recognize it in some cases, and they're outraged.
But that's a psychological problem.
You can't just speak the truth?
Well, no, it's psychological, not. I mean, if you look at the job numbers and the economy, those are real, real progress. You're talking about the real serious psychological problems. People think something's wrong when there's something good going on.
Yeah, look at the taxes. Oh, geez. We're going to give a tax cut to the working men of America, and it goes to nobody but the rich. That's how about
fake news, Juan?
Oh, yeah,
everybody gets $2,600 more in their paycheck each year, and that's a fact.
Check with the rich.
That's not a feeling.
Yeah. Oh.
I think what happened is Trump was elected not to bring continuity and not, guide the country along the path that it was going. Donald Trump was elected to grab America by the back of the neck and then yank it from off the edge of the cliff. For some people, that's very thrilling.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's incredibly jarring. And I think those people are mentally weak. I mean, we had generations that stormed the beaches, and now they're crying in the streets. So I think it's because the media is so negative, and the media is constantly saying the sky is falling, and people can't process that. It's also because Trump is constantly battling everybody. He's taking down institutions, he's fighting with people, he's on Twitter, and we've never had a president like that before, and people can't process that. And then three, people are frustrated because they haven't been able to take him down. They've thrown everything at this guy, and he's still at 45 to 46%. And for them, that's incredibly frustrating, and they need to see a shrink.
You know, Dana, let's say you are the shrink. Okay. And I come in and I go, I have all this anxiety over Donald Trump. He's driving me crazy. What kind of advice would you give me?
All right. I would say it depends on, are you an action-oriented person, or are you somebody who needs to just turn off the TV and turn off Twitter? I know people that are just like, I don't like to watch the news anymore. It's too negative. Or especially like if it was violent, they don't want to watch that. So you do have a choice. If in the Serenity Prayer you ask for wisdom for the things that you cannot change and the courage to know the difference of the things that you can. And so I think that the other thing is, and I do think the Democrats have done this to a large extent, but so have Trump supporters, which is channel that energy into something else. Run for office, donate, decide to turn something into action so that you can actually get involved. If you feel like you're more involved and you're actually being able to do something on either side, then you can deal with your anxiety better. But more is probably, I think, getting off Twitter is probably good.
I do think that there's something to what Jesse said, Emily, which is like, I think the stress actually is real. And it's not, it has to do with time compression. The fact that because Trump has packed like 5 incidents into one day, it's like usually a politician would do something controversial once a week, but it seems like he just, it's like to him, news is shuffleboard. Like if there's a news item, he'll hit that one out with another news item. And so we are just constantly racing and racing. And I can kind of see where that gets exhausting, even for us.
Yeah. Well, sure, the rapidity of the media cycle can certainly be exhausting, but also I feel like part of the issue is focusing on that fright and the fear of what hasn't happened yet. And we're ignoring then to our detriment the negatives that still are in place. So, we were just talking about California. Well, that still has the highest poverty rate if you take into account cost of living. And yet we have 125 approximately billionaires living in that state with $500 billion plus among them. And then LA County just leveraged what, $430 million worth of debt to combat the homeless problem that is growing by the day. So it's almost a shell game where we are focused on what this media, on the headlines, the oversimplification, and then ignoring what really needs our attention.
I'm stealing those stats when I do Tucker later. One, the media in Hollywood share some responsible for this, I think, because they're the ones that are keeping it at a doomsday level, and they're going to fork out millions now. A lot of people in Hollywood are going to fork out millions in the midterms, obviously with the hope to win both houses and impeach. Is that the realistic goal, you think?
No, but I think realistically they have a shot at the House, if that's what you're asking. But, I'm struck by this conversation because to me, you say it's the Hollywood elite, it's the media, it's everybody but Donald Trump. But I'm thinking, if I'm anxious, if the American people are anxious, and according to what I saw in your
I agree with you.
They are more anxious. Apparently you can measure this, right? And they are more anxious. Well, what about Donald Trump's repeated lies? What about the idea he stands next to Putin like a submissive puppy and says, oh, I believe Putin, not the Americans? I mean, wait a second, what side is this guy on? I thought he was our president.
Well, I don't know. I think people are more resilient on the right than people on the left. During the Obama administration, there was, racial riots. There was a lot of domestic terror attacks. There were gas price spikes. There was premium spikes with the healthcare situation. There was a lot of uncertainty and volatility during that time. Conservatives didn't rush to see a shrink. You know what they did? They had a drink and they went to work the next day.
So they created the Tea Party.
I mean,
and they translated that into votes.
And there was ISIS, remember?
Yes.
I mean, that was a little bit of anxiety producing.
Yes.
You're worried about the future of the world. The other thing I would say is part of this is that the celebrities in Hollywood have said they're going to be more engaged now than ever.
Right.
The thing is that the president, yes, for President Trump, he does better if he has someone or something to work against. So I actually think if Hollywood really wanted to help the Democrats, it would be better just to sit back, write checks, and register new voters rather than giving him something to run against.
That's what Clooney said. He wouldn't hang around Obama because he didn't want to tarnish Obama with the Hollywood, stench.
No, they just met behind closed doors.
Exactly. All right, President Trump.
The team is now saying there's no chance Trump's going to sit down for an interview with the special counsel. Rudy Giuliani making the rounds on TV today, though, going after Robert Mueller and Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen. Here's some of the highlights.
My client didn't do it, and even if he did it, it's not a crime. And I have said that over and over again. Collusion is not a crime. I'm no on a sit down until we get ironed out exactly what they want to do. We'll advise the president. He decides, and he's always leaned in favor of doing it. Right now, I'm telling him no way. We're not going to do it.
This is interfering with the ability to govern. It's a horrible thing that Mueller is doing. You tell me a lawyer is taping his client, I got to say, sorry, I made a mistake. The guy is unethical. He's a scumbag. He's a horrible person.
Oh my God.
Wow. All right, so, Greg, Rudy's off the leash today, all day. And
he's off the leash and he's got a little dog in his jaws.
What do you make about the timing and the strategy behind turning loose Rudy?
Well, it's interesting. It's a mess that the more you clean it, the messier it gets. It's like Rudy's strategy is he sees the spill on the carpet and dumps a wheelbarrow of soup over it. But this is part of the package you get from Queens. Trump is from Queens. Nothing goes down without a fight. Nothing goes down without name calling. This isn't Brentwood, Bel Air, or Madison, Wisconsin. These are New Yorkers. You got Giuliani, you got Trump,
And Michael Cohen.
And Michael Cohen. I mean, this is the streets of New York and New Jersey. It's like we're now watching an ongoing episode of The Sopranos.
Wow. But let me ask you something. I don't get you that one. But did you mean that as a compliment?
Yes, I did. Because I don't believe, I'm very skeptical of the attention that's being devoted to this. And so I can't take it seriously. When the ifs become ours, then I will take it seriously. But right now, it's just a background noise.
I'll give you some R's.
Okay.
So Giuliani says, this was just a few months ago, Cohen is an honest guy I trust.
Yeah.
Now he says, this guy, I don't even want to repeat what he just said, but he thinks he's a lowlife.
Well, because he taped the president's phone calls.
No, on a host of issues here, Jesse, he thinks that the guy is a lowlife.
Yeah, well, I would think that if someone...
And then he keeps changing his story. Those are. And then you got to think, Greg, would you want Rudy representing you?
One, this is how life works. Somebody is your low life until they're no longer your low life. Then they're just a low life. But everybody has, oh, yeah, he's my jerk. He's a jerk, but he's my jerk. That's how they look at lawyers. There's no... Sorry, Emily. she just looked at me like...
Take it easy. This is full combat. This is MMA of debate.
All right, now, Emily, as a lawyer, what do you think about this? Do you think it's just a PR game that they're playing and trying to discredit the Mueller investigation by saying that all of these things were happening? He stacked the deck with a lot of Democratic lawyers. Mueller has a conflict. I'm not going to be treated fairly. So when the investigation does come to a conclusion, there's a lot of doubt in the air.
That's absolutely one argument for sure, but there's also been a lot of question as to, well, is there even a strategy, right? And certainly what we saw today might be evidence that it's more of a reactionary one, even though it's always trying to get in front of the news cycle, in front of the statement to put out there what the narrative should be. And that's partly, for example, this, should he sit down with Mueller, should he not? Well, that's in part, the strategy behind that would be to help frame that scope, to frame then that narrative, but obviously it has a lot more potential for detriments than not. And I think if I could throw in my 2 cents about Cohen, obviously everyone keeps repeating, well, it's a one-party consent state in New York. Sure. His lawyer says, well, he recorded all of his conversations because it replaced him taking notes, right? And because there's so many, there's almost 200, that speaks to that. But you still have a duty of confidentiality to your client, which is a broader duty than privilege, for example. So you never release it, and you essentially vow not to do harm to your client with their confidence they've given you. And there also kind of begs the question, so the privilege was waived by that tape, and I think that was a smart move because A, the conversation doesn't continue about, well, there must be something in that tape and there must be something recorded that's nefarious, and also because it takes out the fight. The government could have argued, A, it is privileged, or B, then there's a crime fraud exception. So I certainly think that was wise, but I also think that this either purposeful or not strategy of being mired in the details is a little bit taking us away from the bigger picture.
Giuliani says he wants all the tapes to be heard. He thinks it helps the president if all the tapes are heard. But I've got to think, as I'm sitting here, Giuliani comes out and, for example, he says, yes, we paid off Stormy. Oh, the president knew about that. Now we learned the president knew about Karen McDougal and that payment. You think, is he helping this president?
I just think it's less about the Cohen thing and it's more about Mueller. And now we believe the Mueller thing, if we are to believe Rudy Giuliani, may conclude around September. And the president doesn't want to talk to him, it looks like, at this point.
Well, no, that's not what they said. Rudy Giuliani says he does not want his client to talk to him, but that the president still has always maintained that he wants to talk to him.
On this before the midterms. And Ron Johnson, the head of Homeland Security, said it's a bad idea. And people in the House are saying, hey, we're Republicans, but we're not into this. What do you make of this?
Well, I agree with Jesse, and I personally kind of, I really don't like the threat of the government shutdown or using that as a tool. First of all, we're not really getting much out of a lot of people there anyway. And secondly, as a federal attorney, I was a managing attorney and an acting director. So I handed out furlough papers, and the amount of resources it takes to prepare for a furlough and then execute on it and then ramp back up after, it is inordinate. And so to me, it's just a tremendous hemorrhage, again, of those resources. And also, I feel like, we've talked about this, but the southern border issue, we cannot overstate or underestimate the power of the corruption in Mexico and the Central American countries and the transnational drug cartels. And I mean, almost 150 politicians have been murdered in Mexico, ramping up to their election, and then 5 since their election this month. And so to me, again, if we could just have a little bit more dialogue, I think, from those the districts along the borders, by those reps, by those southern border senators, and have a more engaging conversation in detail.